Hello, this is Kaylia in 2020. What you are about to hear is the remastered version of the episode that you clicked on. Why? Well, it turns out that when I started this podcast, I got some incorrect information regarding copyright law and fair use policy. After nearly 2 years of making content, this oversight was brought to my attention. There was mild panic, lots of guilt, and then a few fervent nights doing research. It seems we might exist in this gray, nebulous area of fair use for critique and commentary, and thus our use of a teeny tiny bit of the music from the soundtracks of the movies that we are critiquing and commenting on might be allowable. But then again, it might not. So a few things. 1, I don't want to be a jerk, even accidentally. 2, I think it's important to acknowledge when you mess up. But 3, and this is key, I think acknowledging your mess up isn't enough. You have to rectify the situation if possible. And guess what? It's totally possible to go back into these old episodes and clip out the maybe illegal, maybe just slightly crappy bit of audio and replace it with a bit of music created just for me by the same composer and performer who made us our theme music. Which is what I'm going to do. And since I can't help but tinker just a smidge, I might clean up a teeny tiny bit of audio noise while I'm in there. I mean, I've learned a lot over the last 2 years, and who knows, you might be stumbling upon this podcast feed years from now. So why should your present-day ears be punished because way back in time, I hadn't yet found the noise reduction button? Anyway, without further ado, here is the podcast you came here for. Just slightly better. Thanks for listening.
It's the Pages of Popcorn's podcast. Jennifer and Kaylia will edify you. It's the Pages of Popcorn's podcast. Jennifer and Kaylia are gonna talk, so you'd better damn well listen.
Hello and welcome to the Pages and Popcorn podcast, the podcast where we, Jennifer and
Kaylia,
2 book nerds, talk about movies based on books as well as the original source material.
Today, we will be discussing the 1996 novel Fight Club, which became the 1999 film by the same name.
But first, we are going to tell you all the ways you can connect with us on the internet.
As you know, we have a web page where you can find sources, references, and updates about the show.
You can also connect to us via our Facebook page or our Twitter, both searchable by typing Pages and Popcorn Podcast into your search bar. And we are on Goodreads. So no matter how you do the social media thing, you can connect to us.
And of course, you're welcome to email us directly at pagesandpopcornpodcast@gmail.com. And we want to really encourage you to rate and review us on whatever platform you listen to, especially iTunes, because that will help other people find us.
As always, we want to thank our Patreons for their ongoing support. We have a supplemental episode coming your direction in the next few days, so keep an eye on your email. And if you have not become a patron, it's never too late. $1 a month, or $5 if you're feeling especially generous, gets you early access to our podcast and supplemental episodes.
And now, on with the show.
So, how did you come to this novel?
Well, I came to the movie first because in 1999 I was 18 years old and we saw it in the theater. Me and my fiance and my best friend, who was a guy. So me and 2 dudes saw this movie in the theater on the recommendation of my best friend, who was like, I'm pretty sure he had seen it because he seemed to know, and he was like, this is mind blowing. We have to go see this movie. And so we went and saw it. Either that or I'm misremembering it. And my ex-husband, then fiance, was the one who was like, oh my God, we have to see this movie. I don't really remember because we saw a bunch of movies around that time that had similar things where we were like unsure about what we were going to be watching. Not that the movies themselves were at all similar, but like we had a similar thing with American
Beauty.
Yes. And yeah, some other stuff.
It was actually a really good year for movies.
Yeah. So we did see a lot of movies that year. Anyways, okay, so I can't remember exactly because this was a long time ago, but I do remember that it stuck with us. Like it was a major thing. We talked about it a lot. We eventually owned it, all this stuff. And then years later, I realized somehow that it was based on a book and read the book and was kind of okay, had a different opinion about the story and the characters when reading the book, and had matured a little bit, and changed my perception of the movie. And then recently, reading the book and watching the movie, feel differently about it again. So, yeah.
Yeah, I have to admit to much of the same is as I've matured, my feelings on this have definitely changed.
Right. And we're going to get into it, but the idea of it being time and place of where it was, it's impossible to look at something almost in a vacuum, because you can look at it and you go, okay, so this is the 90s. This was like reflecting ideas in the 90s and people in the 90s and yada, yada. But then we're reading it today and you're like, okay, but there's a lot of people today who respond to this and still quote this and use this as a foundation for life. And I mean, I guess spoilers here, but the people who tend to do that are not in my friend group.
Well, okay, so we should probably save some of this, but parts of it have become a cultural fossil. So even people who may not have seen the film, they'll know references to it. It's a little bit like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy or The Princess Bride, and then you actually see the thing.
Although I think that a lot of those people who only know a little bit might only know the flashy, quotable stuff and don't really know the point.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the point is different from what gets quoted, and people stop at the quotes or, oh, that sounds so deep and edgy, and they don't realize that, I mean, we're really jumping ahead, but that both the book and the movie are cautionary tales, like, don't do this, like, this is bad, this isn't good. But people don't get that, especially if they're only seeing the memes and the quotes, and, it's getting touted as like this great philosophy for men. That's definitely, that informs even today, like going back and rereading the book and watching the movie, I was like, oh my God, I remember this, like all these guys I knew were like super into it, and it had this negative message. And when I read the book years after seeing the movie, I thought, oh wait, that wasn't the message. The book and the movie had different messages. Going back and reading it now and seeing the movie, no, the messages are pretty similar. I think that the book just did a better job of having the repercussions there. And I don't think the movie does as good of a job of narrating the message it's trying to show you. And so in that case, I think it kind of fails in what it was trying to do.
There are two things. So one is kind of the making of a meme. The internet, I guess, seemed to rediscover the one of us chant. One of us, whenever somebody joins a fandom or something. But almost nobody's seen the actual movie. It comes from freaks. And so there's the memeing of a thing, even if you don't see the original thing.
Yeah.
And the other one, and we should wait to get into this, but this is what I call the Scrooge effect. What do you remember Scrooge for? And what is the message of the story? They're two totally different things.
Right, I see what you're saying, because to be the Scrooge character, like now, don't be a Scrooge. Yeah, if you call
somebody a Scrooge,
you're referencing who he was at the beginning before he had his catharsis. Yeah,
exactly.
No, okay, I see, that's a good thing. Okay, so let's go ahead and do our recap, and then...
Yeah, because it's so easy to jump into the thing. All right, so I am going to gloss over quite a lot and just give more of a bare bones. And it's still going to be a lot, because there's a lot that goes on.
Well, and the book is written in a narrative... timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly, in and out of fugue state, just thought stream of consciousness sort of way. So it would be difficult to just go and then in chapter 1 and then in chapter 2.
Yeah, and we might reference a few things that I don't go over in the summary, but the summary will give you an understanding of what happens.
Yep,
and then we can go into the specifics.
Yep.
Okay, so book plot. The narrator has no name, but fandom and author have accepted Jack as something to call him, so we're going to call him that. Jack works as a product recall specialist at a car company that is also unnamed. He's an actuary who calculates how expensive it would be to recall cars with safety issues versus paying out for injuries and deaths. It's all about the bottom line. Stressed by his job and jet lag, he starts having issues with insomnia. His doctor rather dismissively tells him to visit a support group for testicular cancer to see what real suffering is like. He goes to one, meets Bob, cries, and finds actual relief, which causes him to go to multiple support groups. He has a power animal. It is a penguin that says slide. Well,
I'm sorry. The penguin says, slide.
Okay, that's cute. While at these support groups, another face keeps popping up. Marla Singer, a tourist, who reflects his own falseness and insecurities at him and keeps him from crying. He confronts her, and they argue to split up the support group sessions. But the damage has been done. Jack's insomnia returns. In walks Tyler Durden on a nude beach. He's mysterious and charismatic. After an explosion destroys Jack's apartment, he asks to stay with Tyler. But Tyler has one condition. I want you to hit me as hard as you can. It's clumsy and cathartic. The two move in and start Fight Club. For you at home, you can say it along with me. Rule 1, you don't talk about Fight Club. Rule 2, you don't talk about Fight Club. 3, when someone says stop or goes limp, the fight is over. 4, only 2 guys to a fight. 5, 1 fight at a time. 6, they fight without shirts or shoes. 7, the fight goes on as long as they have to. 8, if this is your first night at Fight Club, you have to fight. We learned some backstory on Tyler. He has odd jobs and anarchist ways. In the house they stay in are Reader's Digest articles where organs write about themselves. I am Joe's liver. I am Joe's medulla oblongata. Jack gets a call from Marla when she notices he hasn't been showing up to the self-help groups anymore. She says she overdosed on Xanax. Tyler picks up the phone to hear her ranting and rescues her, thus beginning their affair. Since Jack never sees Marla or Tyler at the same time, he wonders if they're the same person. Ooh, the irony. Fight Club has expanded to multiple cities, so Tyler uses the club to start an anti-consumerist crusade called Project Mayhem. For funding, Project Mayhem begins gardening to make their own high-end soaps. The soap creation started with Tyler stealing Marla's mother's stored fat Marla left in the freezer for future lip injections. She gets very annoyed when she finds out all that fat has been used to make soap. New acolytes and Bob from Testicular Cancer join in the recruiting movement, similar to monks who have to prove themselves dedicated. During this time, Jack gets Tyler's kiss, a chemical burn on the back of his hand. Jack's boss dies in an explosion, which Jack knows Tyler caused. Lots going on, and Project Mayhem pranks becoming increasingly elaborate and destructive. When Bob is killed during one of Project Mayhem's operations, Jack learns he is Tyler Durden. Oh my god. What a twist. Jack is the one having the affair with Marla. Jack is responsible for Project Mayhem. Jack blew up his own condo. Jack, while he thinks he's asleep, has been out taking odd jobs where he pees in soup and splices porn clips into children's films. It's all been Jack all along. Now that Jack is sort of kind of in control, he tries to stop Tyler's plans to blow up a skyscraper, killing them both. But Tyler knows the narrator better than the narrator knows himself, and Project Mayhem is out to get him, at one point nearly cutting his testicles off on a bus. Jack gets to the roof of the building where Tyler holds him at gunpoint. Marla arrives with one of the support groups to save him. Tyler vanishes as a figment of Jack's imagination, and Jack waits for the bomb to explode. However, the bomb malfunctions because Tyler mixed paraffin into the explosives. Jack, now his own man and can make his own decisions, shoots himself in the face. He awakens in a mental hospital and talks with his therapist, who he thinks is God, and he is in heaven. Project Mayhem members approach Jack and whisper their plans to continue. They are waiting for Tyler to come back. End of book. So, movie plot. The movie starts with a man in a chair in what looks like an abandoned office with the gun in his mouth. How did he get here? Narrator asks himself. Sometime before we see the narrator, henceforth known as Jack, living in a middle-class yet spiritually unfulfilled life. He works as a car recall specialist, a job he finds depressing. Stressed by his job and the unreality all of his traveling causes, Jack develops insomnia. His doctor disinterestedly tells him to go to a support group to see what real pain is like. At a support group for testicular cancer, Jack finds emotional freedom and catharsis nesting into Bob's bitch tits, a condition caused by too much testosterone medication which increased the body's natural estrogen. But oh no, there's a tourist looking in Jack's multitude of support groups. Marla and her presence is calling out the lie Jack lives. He can no longer find comfort. His penguin power animal has turned into Marla. He calls her out, and the two develop an uneasy truce to split up the support groups. On a flight home, Jack meets a soap salesman, Tyler Durden. They have a witty exchange, and when Jack returns home to find his condo is blown up, he calls Tyler. They meet at a bar, discuss consumerism, find out about Tyler's backstory of pranks, and Tyler asks for one favor: hit me as hard as you can. The two move into an abandoned, probably condemned house in an industrial area and start Fight Club. The two are comfortable living together. One night, Marla calls, having overdosed on pills. Tyler picks up the phone, rescues her, and the two start an affair. Jack starts becoming increasingly dissatisfied as Marla and Tyler continue, only finding relief in Fight Club. Fight Club is growing, and Tyler takes on a new role as martyr by losing a fight and winning a victory for Fight Club. Tyler starts to recruit members for Project Mayhem. Project Mayhem begins with acts of vandalism which increase in violence. The violence culminates in the death of Robert Paulson, aka Bob. Tyler leaves. When Jack wakes next, he goes on a search for Tyler, which becomes increasingly disjointed and disturbing. A phone call from Marla cements everything. He is Tyler Durden. Jack tries to protect Marla and turn himself in, but the cops are all part of Project Mayhem. Jack escapes with his balls attached. Jack races to a building with a bomb in an attempt to stop Tyler. The two fight, Jack blacks out, and wakes with a gun in his mouth. Project Mayhem has brought Marla to the building. The narrator realizes that as he and Tyler are the same person, he is holding the gun. He fires it into his mouth, shooting through his cheek, and Tyler collapses. Holding hands, the narrator and Marla watch as explosives detonate, collapsing buildings all around them. The Pixies come on, the end.
Yes. Sort of the blessing and the curse of doing something that is so popular and has been around for 20 years is that there is so much information, so many essays, so many people writing, so many book versus film things have already done.
There's tons of theories.
Tons of stuff. So we could spend the next 2 to 3 hours probably just, summarizing all the different web pages and stuff. So I don't know. How do you want to even tackle this?
I'm going to start with one thing of saying it's okay to have multiple ideas, multiple philosophies, theories about what happens. I don't want to say that we have the definitive version, because anything that's ambiguous, it's done well, will have multiple interpretations.
Right. And I think it's also maybe important to acknowledge the death of the author idea. The author has created a thing, and then the thing kind of lives in its own world. And the author can come and say, well, that's not really what I meant, or that is what I meant. And to a certain extent, yes, we have to take that under advisement. But then we can also say sometimes things kind of outlive the author and outlive the author's intent, especially if the author's writing about a time period and a group of people, and then later on those ideas are co-opted by other people. It would be remiss to not acknowledge that the ideas have been co-opted by other people, that maybe the author is or is not aligned with himself.
Okay, so just a quick note on this. So I do have the DVD version, and there is an audio commentary with Palahniuk. And so there's a really great bit of irony where he's watching Jack lose control of Project Mayhem. And he said, it's a lot like writing a book where I'll have people come to me with all these theories and all this stuff. And the words of my book have outlived me, and I am no longer in control of this. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was a cool bit of irony.
Yes, definitely. Acknowledging that, though, I feel like if you create a work of art and then it's co-opted by evil people and used for evil purposes, I personally think that you as the artist might have a little bit of responsibility where you need to stand up and say, that's not actually what I meant, guys. And if you don't say, that's not what I meant, guys, I feel like you're tacitly condoning people taking your stuff to bad places and using it for bad things.
I kind of go on the red pill term with this, where the people of the Matrix, they never intended red pill to mean men's right activists, pickup artists, all that, men going their own way crap. But that's what the red pills come to be known. And so there's only so much power you have. You can say, this isn't what I intend.
But you could say that. If you never say that, because, let's stop beating around the bush. MRA groups and incel groups and the alt-right has taken this book and said, this is great. This is exactly right. Women are shit. Men need to be primal. Blah, 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 blah. Burn it all down. Let's vote for people who want bad things to happen to people just to see what happens, because we don't like society. We're angry and we're gonna want to piss in everybody's Cheerios for the sake that we can. Yeah. And they point to this book and they say, see, this is what Tyler Durden is a god. This is exactly it. This is what we want. Blah, 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 blah. And I think that was not the point quite of the book or the movie. That it was more, like I said before, like a cautionary thing. Like, don't be like these. These people are mentally ill. These people are fucked up. This is like a guy who just discovered Nietzsche on his way to the coffee shop and has a bunch of ideas, but he hasn't really thought any of them through. So don't be like Tyler. And Tyler dies in the book. That our narrator Jack lives in a mental institution because he's scared to get out, because he's scared of what will happen. And in the movie, Tyler, the God figure, he dies. So in both cases, although differing degrees, like, it's not all rosy good. I think that... Hush. Slinking cat. So to have Chuck Palahniuk not come out and say, hey, men's rights groups, that's not what I meant. To have him be more like, yep, I coined the phrase snowflake, and the left just needs to stop overreacting to things. And also, poor men don't have enough books, and so I had to write a book for men. But and then not say anything else. I feel like that's tacitly condoning. And I mean, that's a different podcast probably and a different topic, but I feel like it has to be at least touched on here.
Well, that's why I mentioned Scrooge earlier, where the message of Scrooge is not how we remember Scrooge. We remember Scrooge the miser. If you're called a Scrooge, you're a miser. You're not the person who became something else. And the whole tragic backstory that he has, the whole thing that made him who he was, is forgotten. So that's what bothers me about that. And then there's also the Lolita issue I have. And if we ever go through Lolita, I don't want to take away too much from that. But what people think of the term as Lolita is massively different than what was intended by the book. So how much, Dickens isn't around during the day of social media to say, why are you guys remembering this and not that? Nabokov, I don't know that he can go back and say, you guys, you're all remembering this massively differently. So, Palahniuk, I don't know.
Is around and is doing question and answer things where he's like, oh, well, poor men. And let me write another book and just be as push all the boundaries that I possibly can for the sake of pushing them.
And certain terms like toxic masculinity, this fits in perfectly, but it's like feminism. Feminism is a term that gets misinterpreted because people will hear it, they'll hear maybe a version of it, or they'll think they understand it from what they hear from popular culture, which isn't what it is in academic terms where it was invented. So toxic masculinity isn't anti-masculinity at all. Masculinity is not a bad thing. Toxic masculinity is looking at the problems with the need to violence, which is what is presented in this.
Well, or toxic masculinity as in it's toxic for men to have these patriarchal ideas that are actually detrimental to the health and well-being of both men and women.
Yes.
Yeah. So things like boys don't cry is a form of toxic masculinity because you're saying that boys can't cry because then they're weak, because then they're like women. I mean, that hurts everyone. It benefits no one. And it makes men feel like they should not be allowed to have emotions, which is unfair. So yeah, there's a lot of components of toxic masculinity, but
we're seeing a lot of that come out right now when it comes to sexual harassment, rape culture. And as soon as people hear, there's no such thing as rape culture, you're just, putting down men. And, what do you expect when you do a certain thing? Men are supposed to act this way. No, you're not supposed to damage other people in your pursuit of being, yourself and being masculine.
Right, exactly. I mean, so we can talk about that. I suppose we could start there with, the idea of masculinity as it's presented in this book.
Because when it starts off, you have Bob, who is a fascinating character, and he's quite nurturing.
Yes. Before we even meet Bob, in the same thing, we're in the testicular cancer thing. So, this whole thing is that men can't be men anymore because they've had their balls removed, which, first of all, gonna go on record, balls don't make you man. Just gonna say, you're allowed to be a man even if you don't have balls. Okay, now that we've said that. So, you've got this support group of men who feel like they've lost their masculinity. The whole book is about guys who are scared to be unmasculated.
Yeah, there's a whole castrati, and so they're the literal castrati of our age. But there's numerous times when they almost castrate people.
Yes,
including narrator.
Because that's the worst thing possible is to have your balls taken away from you, because that would make you a woman, according to this book. Okay, then in the movie, they did a really good job of this, too, because they start off, and he's in the support group, and the guys are all sad. And then the guy who's sharing, this is our first real touch on the fact that women exist in this world, is this man complaining that his wife left him after he got cancer. Now, first off, I'm with you, guy. She's a bitch. She left you after you got cancer. I'm with you. That totally is a shitty thing to do. That, on the other hand, though, does not make all women bitches, first of all, and does not make you less of a man because you weren't able to give her biological children. So what I feel like this sets up is this false dichotomy that I see throughout the entire book. Tyler's big on this. It's this or this. My way or the wrong way. And there's no room for middle ground. And I feel like it starts off very clear in the movie as well. It's, I don't have my balls, therefore I am not a man and cannot provide biological children. And there we are. And that's the end. And then just almost to subvert that, we have Bob in the very next moment. Bob, who is this very hyper masculine man who is doing all of these
he was a bodybuilder.
Exactly, a bodybuilder guy and a juicer, and now he's got the breasts, like they call them bitch tits. Which is like an awful,
I know.
awful.
Both of us were just cringing at that.
Oh my God.
Really.
Okay. Of course. Because again, now you can't, if you have breasts, then you're obviously a female. You're obviously weak. And that's Bob. Bob is the nurturer. Bob is sweet. Bob is gentle. All of these things. And then Bob is ultimately killed because
Project Mayhem.
But also like it could have been anybody, but it's Bob.
Yeah.
It's Bob. And also, in the movie, when they're all showing up on the porch and they're like trying to get in to become part of this cult and whatever, the whole process is they go out and they tell you you're too old, you're too fat, you're too young, whatever, and then if you can stand out there for 3 days, then you get in, right? So Bob shows up and Tyler goes like, oh, no, you're too old, fat man, blah, blah, blah. And Bob starts to leave and narrator goes, oh no, Bob, and he explains so that Bob will stay. So like, you have this thing of this male character who needs help, right? Okay. And has to be rescued almost by the narrator, which adds to the guilt for then when Bob dies, because if the narrator hadn't said, oh no, let me explain the rules of this to you so you'll understand and be able to participate. Okay. And then one other interesting thing about Bob, the rule of Fight Club, I think it's, which number? Is it 5 or 6 where you have to fight without shoes and a shirt?
Yeah, he's the only one who gets to wear a shirt.
Bob wears a shirt while he fights in Fight Club. And I thought, why? Is it because the breasts would be distracting?
It's Rule 6.
Rule 6, okay. Is it because the breasts would be distracting? Is it because that would like
It's
be
shameful?
would it be too embarrassing for Bob? These female, like pseudo-female, because they're not female, but they're pseudo-female, they would be intruding into this male space?
Or is it like too much of a distraction for the guys trying to fight somebody who has breasts?
Right, because
there is an exclusionary thing here.
Oh, big time. This is only for men, right? And that little aspect is...
So there are like 3 main female characters. Bob be kind of one of them. And then you have Marla and then Chloe.
I would say Marla and Chloe. I don't know about...
Well, Bob, I guess feminized characters, because Marla is not a very female-ish character. She's a very masculine character in a lot of ways.
She's a masculine character in the social tropes that we don't expect women to be assertive, bossy, and have autonomy. Yes, which in the case of this book in 1996 and the movie in 1999 was definitely a thing. You know, her masculine traits are that she doesn't take shit, that she calls bullshit out, that she's not afraid, and that she owns herself. Again, going on record, those are not inherently masculine things. A lot of women have that. But in the dichotomy of this book and film, no, we're definitely saying, oh, that's Marla's very masculine and narrator's very feminine. The nesting, he's buying things, he's worried about his home, he's, this, that, and the other. So, but you wanted to talk more about the other females, like Chloe.
Well, like Chloe's based on a real person that Palahniuk knew. So a lot of Palahniuk's writing of this comes out of, I guess it was called Dangerous Writing. It was this group in Portland, and they were supposed to use personal experiences in creating their essays, articles, short stories, what have you. And so a lot of the things that happen in this are based on real life. So Marla overdosing on pills. That's something that happened to Palahniuk, where a friend's girlfriend was overdosing. He couldn't get to her. He called Palahniuk to go take care of him. Palahniuk was driving people to hospice and back. That's something he did for a while, and so he sat in on support groups. And for him, it was really devastating hearing these stories. Chloe is based on somebody who had breast cancer, and she died very quickly after finding it out. But part of toxic masculinity is being sexually aggressive. And that's what I thought was kind of interesting about Chloe, is the whole Freudian sex and death dichotomy, where she's like, I just want to have some personal interaction. I just want to be held like one last time, and how sad and tragic that is, and how much that is denied her because nobody wants to be near her.
Yes. It is denied because she's a female, I will say. Because if she was a guy who just wanted to get laid, there are people. That's what sex workers are all about, right? She could pay someone to have sex. But a woman paying someone to have sex is a whole different kettle of fish. It's not nearly as, I'm going to say socially acceptable, even though with the caveat there. But also, Chloe's desperate, and her desperateness is what is the turnoff. As soon as she starts talking in this part, going, I just want to have sex. The narrator can't even look up. He's looking down and all this stuff. At the same time, her main thing is Chloe's not afraid of death, and she wants to get laid. That's who she is at the end. Marla, not afraid of death, doesn't really care about getting laid until she's getting laid. Then she wants to get laid, but she's not as desperate. She's broken in a different way. So somehow, that's okay. And she is more reactionary to things, so she's not as forceful, and she's not as clear about what she wants and doesn't want, at least at the beginning. She gets more that way, I think, as the thing goes. But so I saw them as two sides of the same coin, Chloe and Marla.
Chloe, we also tend to put people who have cancer, who are going through life-threatening illnesses, what have you, as almost angelic of, well, you're almost dead. You're on a higher spiritual plane, and they're still people. They still want certain things. Mm-hmm. But that goes against the narrative that we have created about people who are, facing death.
Who have transcended the human needs and are better than that now, or
something like that. That just tends to be a cultural touchstone of, well, you're beyond sex at this point. You're thinking about life and death. All the things that are really important.
Which is interesting, because what you really have on these characters is the opposite of that, where they're obsessed with death. They don't the whole fear of death and having a near-death experience is kind of what they want, but they're also mired in that visceral life. Mm-hmm. So yeah, again, with almost the false dichotomy stuff.
Well, there's a lot of irony, and I don't know how much of it is deliberate. One of them that struck me even when I was first watching this, our narrator has this thing, to let doesn't matter truly slide. And yet they're anti-consumerist, and yet they get so disciplined about their garden. They know every single plant that's in there. They're making all these soaps. They are militaristic in their effort to do these things. And so they're not letting what doesn't matter slide. They're doing the exact opposite. So the problem with anarchy, the problem with authoritarianism is eventually you eat yourself. Mm-hmm. If you ever look at studies on authoritarianism, and there's some really fantastic ones out there, it gets narrower and narrower. You start othering more and more groups until eventually your group dies out. So this is a thing. Uh-huh. And that's Fight Club. They're killing themselves. It is a self-destructive thing that you're doing. And to not acknowledge, this is Scrooge. Scrooge is destroying himself, and this is where we try to become enlightened. Fight Club, you're destroying yourselves. This is not the way you're supposed to be. This is not how you become more spiritual or find happiness.
Right. But that's Tyler's way. So to do it the other way would be wrong. As Tyler says, self-improvement is masturbation. And I thought, is it? I don't think that sounds very profound, but no.
It's the self-destructive id that he has.
Yeah. And that's a lot of the things with Tyler is he says these things and it sounds good. And you're like, and then you're distracted by the next thing. And then if you go back, you're like, wait a minute. Case in point, a major part of Tyler's thing. He says, hit me as hard as you can. What? Why? Well, because how much do you know about yourself if you've never been in a fight? And then it moves on from that. And so, okay. And I'm like, wait, pause. I know a lot about myself.
Have you ever been in a fight?
Well, I've been beat up, but I'm just saying, but that's such a weird place to put it. It's you could also say that with anything. You could say, how much do you know about yourself if you've never shot up heroin? How much do you know about yourself if you've never robbed a bank, Jennifer? We could pick anything. How much do you know about yourself and how you've had a threesome? It could be anything, is my point, right? How much do you really know about yourself? So it's so random and arbitrary, right? I feel like, but he has set up this dichotomy. the only way to know about yourself is to do this thing that I'm now telling you that you need to do.
So,
there's not really a lot of room for anything else.
On first blush, when you first watch the film, how charismatic was Tyler?
Oh, incredibly charismatic. And that was the point. He was a charismatic leader. He's a freaking cult leader.
Yeah, but I love that scene in the airport, or not the airport, the scene in the airplane where they first, like, officially meet. And there are scenes with Tyler all through the background. So one of them, I would have never noticed if I hadn't been watching one of the commentaries. Jack is at a hotel. He's watching the little video, and there's all these waiters, and they go, "Welcome! Tyler's in that video." He's off on the right.
Huh.
And so you don't even notice him because he's not the main figure on there. But there's lots of background Tylers.
Oh, yeah, and they blip. They do the thing with the projection. They blip shots of Tyler in
there's about
early,
6 of them.
You know, and it's all very, key important moments. And then, like, you see him at the airport over the line. The voiceover is, "If I wake up in another time, another place, could I be another person?" As Tyler goes by on a moving sidewalk. I mean, it's not subtle. It's not subtle at all.
Some of them are.
I felt like this is why I can't. Once you've seen a thing, you can never unsee it. So, like, you can't watch this movie now and not know that they're two different, that they are the same person and that they're not two different people. So that, of course, colors everything you see. And I am trying to remember when I realized that when watching the movie. And I just can't remember. I don't remember if we, like, had a dawning realization or if it was a shock. I know some people were shocked. I just honestly don't remember. And in the book, it's so obvious so early, like, it's not even trying. And then I thought the movie was going to be more subtle about it, but the movie's not really subtle either. Like, it's so obvious that they're the multiple personalities until it's not. And I have this written down, like, I feel like it's either, because they make some choices in the movie that break the way that we understand multiple personality, working. And so you're like, okay, well, is it subversive or are they just cheating? For example, when they get the police guy and they're going to drag him in the bathroom and threaten to cut off his balls if he continues trying to find fight clubs, blah, blah, blah. And the first time we see it, Edward Norton's character, the narrator's following the guys. Tyler's leaning over the police guy. Tyler's yelling at this guy. And Jack, it locks the door and is standing in the back watching this whole thing. Then later on, when he's like, "I'm actually Tyler," he now has the memory of leaning over the police commissioner, yelling at the police commissioner, being in that Tyler role. Fine. The question is then, who locked the door?
Oh, yeah, stuff like that.
Or, we have, it's very common in multiple personality when people come in and out of a room. And we did that here. Like, Marla and Tyler were never in the same room together, and obviously all of this stuff, because actually it wasn't really that Marla and Tyler weren't in the same room together. It was that Edward Norton and Brad Pitt were never in the same room. Like, the three of them were never in the same room, except that we have Jack brushing his teeth and hearing Marla having sex with somebody in the other room. Now, if she's having sex with Tyler,
I would have said that was dissociation.
Well, okay, but, like, there's so many points of that. But it's either trying really hard to make it so that we don't see it. It's subverting the idea of what we know about how the little the little breadcrumbs that we get along the way in a movie that tells us, like, gives us hints that this is going to be a multiple personality. They're messing with them. And I feel like it almost gets into the cheating category. For me, personally, I was like, after watching it a couple more times, I'm like, they tried really hard to make this, to hide that at the same time while hitting you over the head that they were they were not two separate people.
I don't know. It was, the twist worked for me the first time I watched it. I didn't see it coming. And there are a lot of times when there are little peppered in bits. Like, when he has the car accident, Edward Norton is pulled out of the driver's side. Mm-hmm. Where Tyler was. So there are these little bits where you go, oh, I see that now.
Or, I know this because Tyler knows this. And then sometimes Tyler spoke for me. And then, he's saying the words and he's saying the words. And, all of these kinds of things.
It's a great, so you were just talking about the castration scene with the police officer, where they don't, but it's a threat. Where there's Edward's face, and he's the one staring at the camera, and then Tyler just kind of goes in right in front of him and starts speaking. So that's one of those really cool moments of, this personality's now taking over for that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's...
At the same time, we have Tyler and Marla having sex, and then Jack opens the door, and Tyler says to Jack, what are you doing? And they have a conversation with her in the room behind the bed, of course. Like, she's behind the bed. She can't see the two of them. And then he says, do you want to finish her off? And at first blush, you're like, oh, this is like two guys sharing a woman, whatever. But then you're like, is he offering to, like, cede control of the body at this point so that Jack could do it? Or is that just, like, pushing into Jack because he knows that Jack won't, because Jack's not assertive enough
I would
yet?
put the second one.
So,
he's pushing Jack at times.
Yeah, but it's interesting, right? Like, and that's one of those...
Because that's the whole thing with Jack and Marla, is that he is attracted to her. They are, in very many ways, the same kind of person, but he can't admit that. Mm-hmm. So when his condo breaks up, he originally tries to call Marla first, and just can't. And there are times when they have the argument about, well, we need to split these clubs up so we don't see each other. But he's still kind of pursuing her. He's still after her, and he doesn't want that connection to end.
Yeah, he's the one who says we should exchange telephone numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, remember, magically, it's like one of the few things that doesn't get burnt in his apartment. Which, okay.
So, yeah, he's always kind of wanting Marla, and then he's jealous that Tyler has her because he and Tyler have this kind of homoerotic thing going on. There's a lot of Brad Pitt nudity. He's got his full-on ass, exposed at one point when he falls off the bicycle. It's like, wow, there it is. There's everything.
Yep.
Hi there, Brad.
Okay, I had like 3 thoughts while you were talking, and now I feel like I'm going to lose them. But just a quick Brad Pitt little bit of trivia. He told his parents not to watch this film.
Yeah.
And they watched it up till the chemical burn part, and then they stopped.
In the DVD commentary, he says his mom was okay with the film because that wasn't Brad. He was actually playing Edward Norton's Id, so she was kind of okay with it. Yeah. But there are a lot of background, like, I don't think the director, the writer, anybody wanted their parents to watch the film.
Yeah, the director also made Seven and The Game. I think, so that's important to know. And, God, Seven just made me feel dirty watching it. Like, I just felt unclean and grossed out. And I definitely still feel that way about this movie, too, a little bit. Like, I just feel kind of a little icky. It was really well made. For sure. The cinematography is great.
So you need some soap afterwards?
Yeah, definitely. But ugh. Okay, so speaking of soap, let's talk about another difference in the book. We've got Marla's mom, who's a female character, who sends Marla's mom, who's obsessed with looking the right way, so all about the liposuction, and then sends her liposuctioned fat to Marla so that someday Marla can use it to plump up her lips. Again, because this is what women do. We're destructive, but we're also trapped in a bad system that tells us what we're supposed to look like and not. And then to, subvert that and to break into that and to destroy that, but also for his own gains, we're going to use this fat to sell soap, make soap, and then sell it back to the rich ladies.
It's interesting you talk about Marla's destructiveness, because the guys, they go out and fight each other. Marla overdoses on pills.
It's very, very gendered.
It's internalized.
Well, yes, but it's also, pills are like the women's way of doing it. Like, and even she even says, like, it's a cry for help, and it's gendered. It's a gendered trope that women take pills and then call for help and stuff. Although a difference between the movie and the film is that in the movie, our narrator picks up the phone, hears her, decides to just leave the phone and leaves. But in the book, he doesn't even answer the phone. Tyler's the one who answers the phone and does that. So it kind of takes that onus of choice out a little bit. So that was an interesting change.
Well, yeah. And so if we're speaking about ironies, there's, being clean, that the soap is from human fat. The creation of soap and human sacrifice, it's supposed to be a Hindu legend. So human sacrifice, and that's how you get soap and you get really clean off of what's kind of gross and dirty.
Well, and again, like, Tyler doesn't really understand what he's spouting. He has this very romantic ideal about hunter-gatherer societies. Like, apparently hunter-gatherers never fought or had war or, anything like that, because I'm assuming his thought is that it's just, well, hunters hunt and gatherers gather, and it's strict gender roles, and there we go, and everybody's happy and fine. And
I think he sees the brutishness that is part of that life and embraces it. That's his whole thing, is that life is brutish.
Yes, that's part of it. But it's not like we're just hearkening back to gladiator times. Like, we're going to hunt elk in this, and we're going to, like, tear down society so that it can go back to this way that it used to be back when it was pure, and men were men, and women were women, and everybody knew their place, and blah. So one of the things that I read online was the impression we're left at the end of Fight Club is the rearrangement of Marla and Jack's masculine and feminine traits leads them to become better people. Marla, as the feminine woman, is more tender towards Jack and thus more appealing to him at the end. And Jack is more masculine and more confident towards Marla and thus appealing to her. This suggests that only through the proper alignment of masculine and feminine traits can one truly achieve good character and proper ethos.
Oh, that's gross.
While feminists and supporters have worked vigorously in an attempt to blur the lines of gender constructs, this movie shows that despite that progress made, they're still very apparent in modern culture and modern society. And I want to say, gag. Gag me with a spoon.
I was doing that while you were talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, that was when you were talking about the masculine, Marla being masculine. It's like, yeah, kind of, but also...
Well, I was talking with a friend about this because he's very analytical and I wanted to get his take on things. And so that was one of them I have to watch the movie again, of course. And then for him, Marla was the most masculine figure. It's interesting to listen to Helen Bonham Carter's narration of what she thought of the character because she does see her as very feminine. Mm-hmm. She does see her as being caring. The whole thing with checking, do I have breast cancer, is a way for her to reach out to Jack. And she's dealing with this guy who's being just a complete asshole and continuously forgiving him to a point.
But she reaches out in a help me, I'm in distress sort of way.
Yeah.
And in a body, oh, my breast, I mean, it's dangerous and sad, but also my breast. I'm stroking myself as I look at you. Sorry, I couldn't help it. But do you know what I mean? And then, I mean, with the bridesmaid dress, which also would have been better as a bride's dress because nobody loves, oh my God, her whole little spiel. Somebody loved this dress for a day and then threw it away, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no. Bridesmaid dresses? Nope. No. Bride's dress? Sure. But I guarantee you, most people hate the dresses that they're forced to wear. I, for one, had like a graveyard of bridesmaid dresses.
I would think a prom dress would have been a
prom dress would have been good too. In the book, it talks about it was handmade and there was like tiny stitches. In the movie, that was very much glossed over, which I thought was like kind of they could have really done something there.
Okay, so we were talking about lines that stayed with us, and that scene had one of those lines that just kind of stuck with me, where she's talking about, I'm going to say prom dresses because that's a better version of this, that people loved and then threw away. And she has this line about rape victims. And the way it's treated culturally and the way it actually is, there's this line where, these girls were loved and then they were raped and then they were sort of just discarded by society, or they're treated as less than in society. And that's one of those lines that stayed with me as just being painfully true in a lot of ways that are really ugly. Mm-hmm. And you said you had a line that you remembered, and you were guaranteeing me that we did not remember the same line.
So was that your line? That
was the line that I was reading this during Christmas. I was working at retail, and so I would read the book during my Christmas break. So again, consumerism. I was selling stupid ass mugs and calendars for a job. Funny. And so during my break, okay, I'm going to read this anti-consumerism book.
I was working in a bookstore when I saw this movie. That's funny. Okay, go ahead.
So, yeah, I got to that line, and I had to stop for a minute and just put down the book and think about that line because it hurt a little too much to read that.
Yeah. No, not a line, a scene. A scene that in the book stayed with me, and I was always very sad that they didn't have it in the movie. And that is when they meet. Now, I understand in the movie they have them meet on an airplane, and I get that it throws back into our narrator's travel and insomnia and also like the single serving.
So you wanted the nude beach?
Hold on. Yes. But not because of the nudity. But anyways, the idea of the single serving friend, but then Tyler breaks that mold. Like Tyler's different and like is challenging and assertive and also like kind of not caring and like all of that stuff. And that's a great scene when they meet on the plane. I'm not discounting it at all. I mean, it's got a lot of layers. First of all, like, well, I mean,
the transfer of power.
The transfer of power is amazing because the other time we see him, Edward Norton's character on a plane is when he's like basically he's telling somebody about his job and the woman is horrified. You know what I mean? About like what the cars, what company do you work for? A major one. So when he's talking to Tyler on the plane, like it's really well done. They have the matching case. Tyler doesn't care. Tyler makes and sells soap and he's got his hand. I mean, it's just, he's all flashy with his clothing. And then he doesn't want to sit in the emergency line, area. He's going to move because he doesn't want that responsibility. And then he has this whole, like, a question of etiquette. Do I give you the ass or the crotch as I pass? He gives Edward Norton's character the ass, but then when he passes behind the stewardess down the thing, he gives her the crotch. I mean, like, that is a great scene.
Yeah.
In the book, though, they meet on a beach, nude beach, sure, whatever, but it's a beach because Edward Norton's character, Jack, has actually taken a vacation. He's trying to sleep, and he falls asleep, and then he meets Tyler. So, like real obvious, like, if you're looking for the clues that he has fallen asleep, and then Tyler is there. This is when Tyler is created. Tyler is this perfect man, so that kind of ties into the nude beach part. Like, there's just, like, this Adonis and very blonde.
The Ubermensch.
The Uberman, okay? He's very blonde. He's perfect. But then what is Tyler doing? Tyler's not interested in Jack. He's not paying any attention to Jack. Jack wakes up and he watches Tyler work. And Tyler is dragging these logs, these driftwood logs, and setting them up in the sand in this very meticulous, planned out way that doesn't make sense to anybody else except Tyler. Tyler has a plan. And then Tyler waits, and when the sun is just right, the shadows of these logs make a palm, and then he sits in the palm of, as he calls it, God. One shining moment of perfection. Like, he's worked all afternoon to make this one moment. He lived in that moment, knowing that it was fleeting, and then when it was over, it was over. And it wasn't sad that it was over, it just was. And I was like, this is a guy who can lead cults. Like, this is beautiful and amazing. And if he had stayed like that and didn't take it to that next level of extreme of we have to burn everything down and, you know, people are like, let's be like, you're a butt wipe and I'm a butt wipe and let's destroy the Mona Lisa and all of this stuff like that. But how it started right there in this beautiful moment of time, working to create a moment of time, having this level of a plan that nobody else understands. Like, I thought that was great. I thought it was a great idea of Tyler, a great introduction. Also, we have the narrator who has a mark on his foot that he keeps hidden. It's a birthmark. And when he was in college, in the book, this is a thing, they thought for like 15 minutes that he had this special kind of cancer, and he was incredibly important for 15 minutes. All these doctors were coming in, and they were like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And they had like ceased to think about him. They were all thinking about the cancer. Everybody was looking at his foot, and he was special. And I thought that that was a really good scene because it kind of ties into the whole support, you know, group stuff where he's going and people are like inherently more special because they're dying. And like that is like a thing, you know? And so, but when he's at the beach, he even says multiple times in the book, he hides that foot in the sand. He literally hides it in the sand so that it's not seen, so that it's private, because like it's this memory of when he was special. He hides
that he was special. His cancer was special. His cancer
was special, but for a second he was, you know, like if you do something special, then that makes you special. Or, you know, if you're part of something special, then you're special too. And so like, but he's hiding it in the sand, and then up from the sand pops up Tyler, like this other version of himself who's perfect, you know, and who's going to do all of these things. And then again, it's like, he isn't the cancer. He's not the special, but he's associated with the special. Like, he's like the helper of founding Fight Club. He's with Tyler, but he isn't Tyler, except that he kind of is, you know, obviously at the end. So I thought, oh my God, this scene is great. And I understand why they didn't put it in the movie. And I think what they did in the movie was great. Fine. But that was the scene that
would have been so hard to convey in a movie.
Totally. Almost impossible.
Because it's all internal.
It is. Yeah. And I get it. But the image in my head, when I think of Fight Club and I think of Tyler Durden, I think of naked Brad Pitt sitting in the hand of God. Do you know what I mean? Which is a fun image. And if you have a chance to think of naked Brad Pitt and sitting in the hand of God on a nude beach, I mean, enjoy.
So that brings to another point of this whole idea of gods and fathers.
And the irony.
Yeah.
Again, this false dichotomy.
Okay, do you want to go with that?
Well, I think it is. It's a false dichotomy that Tyler sets up. He's like, okay, so your father is your form of God. How freaking heteronormative of you. Fine. And then, and so then if your father leaves you, abandons you, or doesn't care about you, then what does that say about God? And I'm like, it doesn't say anything about God, but fine. Okay, like in your little metaphor. And then he goes on like, da-da-da-da-da, we've been raised by women. I don't think a woman is really what I need. I'm thinking, okay, but dude, it's not the women who abandon you. It's the men. It's the father. It's the guys who abandon you. So maybe don't be angry at the women. Hold on. So then what we have is these men who have abandoned you and you don't like it. You're like, men are, you know, the father God is bad, you know, so screw that, blah, blah, blah. But then what does Tyler do? Tyler becomes the all-knowing God father to all these other men. Like, he's like, patriarchy is bad. so I'm going to live in patriarchy and use this tool for my own benefit. But you better not rebel against me. Don't do anything that I don't want you to do. Do not question authority. Exactly. Don't question authority. Don't ask questions. You're going to get castrated. I will take away your manhood because... So, I mean, talk about extreme irony. And also, like, the false dichotomy of, like, you're either with me or against me. You're either, like, a god or you're not.
So there's the thing with, we're raised by women and you have Bob. And Bob is the nurturer. Bob doesn't ever abandon him. Jack abandons Bob to go with Tyler. But then there's that scene in the movie where Tyler leaves, and it is probably verbatim what his father said when he left Jack. Because at the end, he even says, see you later, champ, and pats him on the head. So that whole thing about the fathers leaving and abandoning and how they're trying to find their fathers, and that to
by basically becoming their fathers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's a lot in the book, and I have like a ton of quotes here of bad attention is better than no attention. And so they all feel like they're alone, that they have no attention, even though at the beginning, Jack acknowledges, he is kind of on the top of the food chain when it comes to, he's a cis white male. He's got all the advantages and he's still unhappy. And it reminds me a lot of the feminine mystique of these women who were supposed to be happy. Well, I have my kids. I have my husband. I have my house. I'm supposed to be happy. Why the fuck am I not happy?
Well, and I think that speaks to the time of when this book and the movie were made. We were coming out, it was like Gen X and the beginning of millennials, but it was more like the idea of the boomers had this path, but the rules of manhood and the rules of what works in society are changing, and things are becoming more politically correct, and populations that have not been treated equally are like clamoring for rights, and things are changing.
We talked about this last week. This is also the start of chick lit, so you had a lot of chick lit books.
Right. But okay, so a lot of things are changing, and we've got these paths by our boomer parents, but we don't want those. We want to reject those paths, but we don't really know where to go. Like, we don't have another thing. So, like, there's struggle there. And there's, like, who am I? And how do I fit into this new world?
This is a lot of The Graduate. This is the 1999 version of The Graduate of, I am supposed to be an adult in this society, and I don't fit in. I don't get it. It doesn't work for me.
Right. And there's a lot of prosperity happening. We got the .com booming happening in the late 90s. If it was easy for a lot of people in a lot of ways, And so, like, okay, but now what? What do we do? And then you have people who are having, like, midlife crisis at age 27, because they didn't know. And so that's sympathetic. I can totally sympathize with that. And that's definitely a product of the time. But it is a small subset of the population who was dealing with that because, there's still a lot of people struggling. There was still a lot of disenfranchised populations. And, this book, like you said, it is very much the angry young white man thing. It's not, even like in the fight clubs, there's a couple of old guys, there's a couple of people of color, but it's predominantly angry young white men who are doing this because they're like trying to find their place, which is of course why it resonates so well with the MRAs and people like that. But to your response, like, yes, there was at the beginning a chick lit. Women were reading, women were writing, women were, getting together and all of this stuff. And so one of Chuck Palahniuk's exciting quotes is about how he went to bookstores and he saw that there was like the Joy Luck Club and like how to make an American quilt. And he was like, there's no books for men about men. So, we need to have books for men about men, ignoring for the
most of history.
Most of history has been books about men. But fine, oh my God. J.K. Rowling had to write as J.K. Rowling because women authors are still not taken as seriously as men authors, especially in certain categories like fantasy, and especially in the 90s, right? Like, this is just... So I do not grant your frickin' premise, Chuck Palahniuk, but fine, whatever. You saw a lot of books in the bookstore and you felt like men were being left out, so you wrote a book for men. That's what you did.
Okay. I want to take a step back, though, and if somebody's feeling disenfranchised, even if they're at the top of the social food chain, as it were, there is still a sense of disenfranchisement. I don't want to discount that people have pain, even if they aren't in a disenfranchised group.
Sure, that's fair.
So
no, and I like I said, I get like the whole idea, like the world was changing and a lot of people didn't know how to go with this new road. And like, they didn't want the path that was laid out, but they didn't have another thing. And so like, this is like part of the learning pain or the growing pains of like figuring that out. For sure.
So I just had this argument with somebody over white privilege, and, obviously he's a white guy going, well, if you're saying white privilege, obviously you're despairing white people. No, it's not that. You can still have a terrible life. You can still have challenges and be white. That's not the point. It's just you don't have the added challenges that women have, or, especially black women or Hispanic men. There are challenges you don't face because you're white.
Right.
And so that's the thing with disenfranchised white guys is there is a pain there that is obviously needing to attach to something and to find a way. So I don't want to take away from that because there's still that problem. So one of the things that they were looking at, and I'm talking about Pal Nook here, you're raised... And, we were raised with television, which was something that wasn't done with the baby boomers. I mean, they had whatever they had. So we were raised on commercials. We were raised that, a consumer life will make you happy. This is your spiritual fulfillment. And it's just, a trip looking at commercials sometimes and going, wow. So if I have a washer, I should dance around and be happy because that's the thing that will fulfill me in life.
Right.
So... yeah, I do get this. This is why, like, the artist Bansky he's all about this anti-consumerist mentality. And
right.
There is this irony that, yes, he's selling books. Bansky is making a living off of his art somehow. But I get that part of Tyler. I get that part of being fed up of our culture is something that we have been sold. Mickey Mouse is our culture, and it's a commodity that we're being sold. And so where are we as a culture? What is our culture if it isn't McDonald's and Mickey Mouse?
Agreed. And I think that is why he reaches so many people, Yeah. And so if you stop at the bar where he's like, you are more than the sum of your parts. You're more than your job. Like, whatever, man. And then like, you don't need all that shit. Like, that's fine. You can move on, do something else. That's fine. You get me until there. But when you take the next step of,
vandalizing?
and then hurting people. Like, and it's like, we're going to destroy this building. Don't worry. We've made sure there's nobody's in the building. Where the fuck do you think that building's going to go? It's not going to just disappear. It's going to fall on people. There's other people. Like, so like, this is the thing. Like, Tyler doesn't think it through. And, he's like, okay, so this is bad. We destroy it without thinking about the next step. Okay, well, where's the building going to fall? What about the people in the other buildings? What about all those people who don't have jobs now? Or all of the, you know what I mean? Like, all of this stuff.
They put up a sign that says, motor oil will fertilize your garden. Mm-hmm. Like, that's doing massive damage that doesn't go away anytime soon.
Well, and just destructive for the sake of being destructive. I'm going to pee in your soup because then I get off on knowing that you're eating my pee. And like on one hand, you're like, okay, but that's guerrilla warfare. That's like the poor, rising up against the rich and the establishment. And you're like, okay, I can kind of get it, and it's gross, but but then you have. What the hell did those children ever do to you, Tyler? You're gonna like traumatize them with like porn and stuff in the middle of their kids' movies? Like that's just mean for the sake of being mean.
To me, it's directionlessness. Okay, you peed in somebody's soup. Great. What does that accomplish, really? Other than you get your little sense of vengeance. And it doesn't do anything to change society. It doesn't do anything to change the system.
And it really doesn't do anything to the people who ate it. Because they don't know. In the book, it was worse. Because what he did was he slipped a note to... They were catering at a fancy people's house. And he slipped a note to the hostess saying that somebody had peed in one of her many perfume bottles. And she had no idea which perfume bottle.
Yeah, and she's devastated by it.
Well, she's devastated because she feels very betrayed. Like, who in my friends would hate me enough to do this? It's not even as much of, like, this is a gross thing, but somebody hates me enough to do this to me. Like, that is very hurtful. It's not a random act of violence. Like, somebody is being malicious and wants me to suffer because I don't know which one it is. So it's like mental torment now. It's torture. Like, and not just the visceral, I'm going to have to throw away all of my perfume because I don't know which one's been peed in, but also like somebody hates me. And that's a horrible feeling. And so like, because Tyler feels like the world hates him, Which, maybe the world does for a good reason, Tyler. Whatever. So that's how he's going to be. If you hate me, I'm going to make you feel like somebody hates you. And so that's his fight. But in the movie, that's not there. They leave that part out, and it's just, let's just fart on things and pee on things and, probably jack off in the cream of mushroom soup or the clam chowder. Oh my God. It's like, why? Oh, God. So, yep, that's where you lose me. Sorry.
Yeah, so that's what gets me is the direction. I'm angry, and so I'm going to take it out on random people who did me no wrong.
Yeah.
But I get the anger. I get why he's upset. I in a lot of ways, I feel the same of... I had this huge issue for a while where a Beatles song was used to sell, crap, because Michael Jackson bought the rights to a lot of the Beatles songs. Beatles were not about that. So, like, Revolution, I think it was Revolution used to sell Nike shoes. And the whole point of that song was anti-consumerism and anti-establishment and, anti-Nike bullshit. And so it really pissed me off. And people were like, just relax, Jen. What the fuck? I mean, just chill. It's a song. It's a commercial. I'm like, no, but you're selling out the things that mean everything. So there is that scene in the movie where they are destroying cars. They're just like wrecking them. And they skip one that's kind of a little bit older and cheaper because, well, this person's not being consumerist because they have an old junky car because they can't afford better probably. But then they really go after the redone 60s Bug because the original Bug, it was meant to be the kind of the flower child car. And now because of baby boomer nostalgia, it was brought back. It's expensive. It just completely destroys the original intent of the car. So I get his anger. I totally get that. I just think there are better ways to go about it.
Indeed.
Yeah, so that's our feminist progressive attitudes on this, and we might be totally missing the point because this is our perspective in life. But then, there's a billion essays out there. There's lots of stuff to look at, and this is just another addition to the pool. I think it's good to get multiple perspectives. Okay, I'm getting a look.
I mean, multiple perspectives are fine, but I some people are just wrong. And I don't think you have to give even time to people with whatever. That's a different rant, actually. Okay. So Marla has a line in the book, which is
changed in the movie.
That's changed in the movie.
I'm glad they changed it.
I don't know. In the book, she says, "I want to have your abortions," which to me is like, I'm going to try to be crass for the sake of being crass, and also I don't want to have protected sex, but I certainly don't want to procreate with you. And there, okay, so fine, weird, but sure. In the movie, she says,
I haven't been fucked like that since grade school.
Which is way more disturbing than I want to have unprotected sex and then, whatever. Like, I don't care about the consequences.
The arguments that are coming out right now with the anti-abortion groups, I'm just glad that they changed that line because of that. Because people would point to that and go, oh, yeah, see, this is what women want.
In 1999, they probably would have anyways. But no,
it is more disturbing.
No, it is way more disturbing because, okay, first of all, let's dissect this line. First of all, she has just been fucked in a good way. That is the important beginning of this. Like, she has enjoyed herself.
Yes.
So then she says, I have not been fucked like that since grade school, implying a few things. One, that when she was in grade school, she got fucked. Two, when she was in grade school and got fucked, she enjoyed it. Okay, multiple problems. One, you should not be fucking girls in grade school. Girls in grade school should have nothing to do with fucking of any way, shape, or form. Gonna just lay that out there. Second of all, enjoying it or brainwashed into enjoying it, or what the hell. And then I feel like maybe like this line is supposed to give us a clue. I know it was like ad-libbed on set, so like nobody gets too much thought into it. But here's the thing: what it does is it sets up a reason for Marla. Marla was obviously sexually traumatized as a child. Marla is recovering from that trauma, and she is one of those sex abuse victims who's left behind, who is like you were talking about before, but now she's all grown up. Okay, not everybody who's abused as a child grows up to be a Marla, but we're not giving other examples, and all we really know about Marla's history is this. This is our extent, and in the book she has a mom who's, obsessed with like her looks, and that's basically it. Like, we don't get a lot. There's not much information to go on. So the fact that they allowed this ad-libbed, bit of dialogue that gives us a whole backstory and that's all we get of her. Like, I find that very unsettling.
So this goes to one of the questions about Palahniuk. For the most part, I don't think he means a lot of what he's writing, and so I don't take it that seriously. It's a little bit like he's writing a cartoon. So it goes to the question of the violence in the film. A lot of people are disturbed by the violence, but there's the same level of violence in a Schwarzenegger film that nobody gets up in arms about. So is it the realism of the violence? Because, I don't know, when I see, like, actual damage, when you see that it looks real and it feels real, it's more disturbing than the cartoon stuff that was really popular in the 80s.
Yeah, well, we had a lot of bloodless violence at one point in our cinema and TV shows and stuff. People get shot, they fall off screen, we don't really see it.
Well, like, I think it was the first Nightmare on Elm Street, there's like a flood of blood going up. So is that more disturbing than, was it 125 Hour, whatever that film was?
I don't watch horror, so I cannot weigh in on any of what you're saying, but gross. I do think, like, so the violence in here is very visceral, and it is very close up, and it dwells on it, and it's like, it's
a lot more realistic. Fist fights are clumsy and awkward.
It is not realistic. The first fight is very flail heavy, and that's hilarious. It's funny and blah, 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 and it looks very real because it is all blah, blah, blah. Later on, with the cinematography and, like, the close-up and stuff, and I'm sorry, maybe you do or don't know this, but if you punch someone the way that those guys were punching people, your hand will break. Like, unless you have a brick or a roll of quarters in your hand, nobody had broken fingers. Everybody had broken noses. Everybody had, like, the teeth thing. Fine, whatever. That's, like, superficial. And the sound effect Foley guys were having a great time. Bam, bam, bam. But, like, nobody broke their hands. So,
by the way, punching somebody in the face is a great way to break your hand.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Nobody broke their hands. Nobody broke their fingers. Nobody had, like, and then, like, they are fine. They're typing. They're doing all of their regular stuff.
So, note to people, punch people in the neck or something. Don't punch them
or
in
the
the
ear.
face. Yeah.
No.
But it's like that first fight is really... because fist fights are clumsy and ridiculous to watch. People don't know how to fight. It's never the martial arts film.
Right. And this makes it does glorify it a little bit, but as we go on, because then it is tight shots and visceral, and we're just seeing the blood and we're hearing the things, and it's everyone's yelling and it's all slappy and blah and gross. And
okay, so here's a scene that they shot two different ways. It's the one where he just goes after Angel Face, and he wants to destroy something beautiful. Major theme in the book is, I want to, wipe my ass with Mona Lisa. So he destroys Angel, and they shot this two ways. And the first one, nobody reacted any differently. It was like, yeah. The second one, there's judgments around. Like, everyone's kind of stops because he's breaking one of the rules. If somebody passes out, if they go limp,
you're supposed to stop. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's like, oh, you violated the rules, and they all get kind of judgy.
Although there's no consequences for breaking the rules. Just gonna point that out.
Yeah, everyone just goes, oh, you went too far. The audience opinion of that scene just vastly differed based on how that version was shot. So if there was no judgment, they were like, yeah, it's just a fight, whatever. When there was judgment, oh, that scene went too far. That was too violent. So I always thought that was really fascinating, how you control an audience reaction just from the reaction of the people that are around in the set.
Well, because you have the everyman person. Like, we get our clues from how people react, whether or not something is good or bad.
Yeah, but the level of violence wasn't any different. So it's not the violence itself.
No, but again, we're getting our clues about how we're supposed to react based on the group mentality of it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, but objectively, the violence isn't any different. It's just our clues to how we should perceive that violence is different.
Right.
So when I'm looking at like an 80s, like Roadhouse or something, something really stupid where there's supposed to be violence, but it's all cartoony, you don't take it that seriously until you're told to take it seriously. Mm-hmm. So that's why I wonder about Palahniuk. The reason why Palahniuk is palatable is because it doesn't feel like he really means it. And it's like the grade school thing. People laugh at that because they don't take it seriously. It's too outrageous. It's too silly. And so if that does happen, they're distanced from it. And that's why I wonder about rape culture and sexual harassment of, well, men are supposed to be sexually forward. You're supposed to do this sort of thing. Damn the consequences of it. So it's that kind of distance. I don't take Marla that seriously when she says that. It's one of those lines. And I wonder about that later on of exactly what you said. Well, wait a second. There are implications here. But if you don't take her seriously, all those implications are just, oh, that was funny.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say it's funny, but yes.
It was a laugh line. It did get laughs from the audience because it's such an outrageous thing to say.
So awful that it got laugh lines in the audience. It's just horrifying. First of all, that's fucking rape culture. I will also note that is one of the only times when Tyler goes, "Whoa," because he does. He's like, "That's fucked up." Like, even Tyler's like, "Not cool, dude. Like, you've gone, there's a thing here." Tyler in his pink fuzzy robe is like, "Nope." You know? Like, okay. So, yeah, another thing that got laugh lines in the audience, when I saw this in the movie theater in 1999 was when our character walked around, our main character, Edward Norton, says to his boss, "What if I walked around with an AR, blah, 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 and I shot everybody in the office? I could just stalk around with my big-ass gun, and I could kill everybody." And everyone's like, "Ha, ha, 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 ha! Holy crap!" Like, that line does not age well. Because,
no, it doesn't.
Holy crap!
Well, that's what I was saying about the abortion line, is right now that would have been one of those lines that I could see certain groups trotting out and going, "Oh, this is what women do." I'm like, no, it was a movie. It was a movie. It was a movie! There's not real life.
I'm just saying, like, that line wouldn't have played it. Yeah. I mean, other than, like, the fact that there's a payphone and there are no cell phones, like, this, you know, it could be pretty timeless. Like, we don't know the name of the city that they're in. You know, there's a lot of stuff that works, that is universal. And, you know, especially those feelings of anger and not knowing where you are.
I do love, you know, I am Jack's raging jealousy.
Yeah, that's one of the best parts that I can take away from this. It's the humor of that.
It's disassociation, and yet it's so honest about how you feel, because you're not supposed to acknowledge jealousy and rage and anger and stuff, and the way he has to do it.
All the feelings.
Yeah.
I am Kaylia's foot cramp of frustration. Laura Miller of Salon wrote a scathing review of Diary, but it was another Palahniuk thing. But she says this about Palahniuk's books. They traffic in the half-baked nihilism of a stoned high school student who's just discovered Nietzsche and Nine Inch Nails. Everything even remotely clever in them has been done before, and better, by someone else.
Ouch.
Yep. I like you, Laura.
I like Laura, too.
Okay. Do you have any... I mean, I got some other random little things, but that's basically...
Let's see.
The men hugging and crying in the support groups, they're only able to get comfort and help from other men, and it's fucked up when Marla, the non-man, shows up. So, like, it was like their only time when they're in their new place of being not men because they don't have their balls anymore, could actually get support with men, with other men. And then that's, like, also with the Space Monkeys being just men with other men. Like, we don't need... Except apparently Tyler still has Marla, so I guess the cult leader gets to sleep around, but nobody else.
Well, always.
Always.
Here's a little background. So, Tyler is based on a Walt Disney character. Tyler Goes to the Circus. And then Durden was a co-worker of Palahniuk's who left the company under a dark cloud of sexual harassment rumors. That really does speak to what Tyler is. One of the things I loved going back is his name was Robert Paulson, and how this misinterpretation gets amplified, and how much of that do we have in religion, where somebody will take one tiny little Bible quote, and that becomes, like, you forget there's the rest of the book. And that's the same with the Quran, that's the same with the Torah, or, you know, almost any religious book. And you can have that with politics as well. But you have sort of this iconoclast of somebody saying, "Oh, here's a thing," and then that little bit gets misinterpreted, and
it gets a life of its own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really fascinating, because all these guys who are trying to find an identity are losing their identity and becoming space monkeys.
Yes. Even the priest. The priest gets corrupted.
Okay, so that scene after the priest and the mechanic fight each other, and they hug each other at the end. Palahniuk had this thing where afterwards people would go up to him and say that was a really powerful scene, just because there is that emotional connection even through this fight, which, I don't know, maybe that's a uniquely male thing to go through.
I feel like what it is a shared adrenaline spike, which is the same thing with, like, a car crash. And you gotta remember, like, the movie Crash, which was all about people getting into car crashes so they could get off, had just come out. I mean, like,
It's different from the race film, by the way.
Yes, because the one I'm referencing, like I just said, just came out in 1997, I think. So, like, I mean, that's that adrenaline thing. Like, really, Tyler's just an adrenaline junkie. You know, it's like jumping out of planes or doing anything else. It could have been like, I keep coming back to this. It could have been like shooting heroin. You know, like it gets you to a thing, and then you see God, or you are God, or whatever, and like you have this shared experience with other people.
So the adrenaline junkie.
Do you think it's interesting at the end, Tyler's head is also shaved at the very end because now he's become part space monkey, but also like, it's like he's the leader, but he's also a follower. And
so there's a background note that Tyler gets better looking through the film and Edward gets more beat up through the film. As I was watching, it's like it's not.
I don't agree with that.
Yeah, it's not that much there, but that was one of the things I guess they were trying to do.
Trying to do that.
So Fight Club. The idea for the book was based on a real-life event where Palahniuk was out camping, and there was an issue with noise. So there was another group that sat next to them, or they were in the campsite next to them. They had their radios on all night, and they were blasting music and sound, and he got really upset. They fought, and then for the next 3 months, people would avoid looking at him in the face.
Because he was marked.
Yeah. And so that was one of those cultural interests of his, like, well, how was your weekend? And you're staring at this person with 2 black eyes going, oh, boring. I didn't do anything. I have a friend who does sword fighting as, one of her hobbies, and she gets beat up a lot. So she'll come in to work. She works at a hospital and she'll have black eyes and all these bruises and whatnot. And she's very physical. So she does a lot of these physical things, and people keep coming up to her. If someone's abusing you, we can help. So she gets that a lot, which she's like, no, that's really not a problem. Trust me.
But it's good that people
good that people are trying to take care of her, but it's also funny that it's very much the opposite of what they think it is.
Right.
But no, it's a good thing if you ever see a woman with like bruises all over.
Or a man.
Or a man, yes.
So good to ask. Definitely. I know that he wrote, it was a short story. It's chapter 6 was the original short story. I went back and just read just chapter 6, and that was just the bit with him, the bloody teeth and the microscoped guy and a little bit of that scene where he's thinking about Fight Club. It was the original short story. So no Marla, not really a whole lot of Tyler. And I have to say that I liked it as a short story. It would have left me wanting more as opposed to being like, oh my God, I feel like this got really repetitive. Like, especially in the book when he's realizing that he's Tyler. My God, we have 10 pages of that. Oh my God, I'm Tyler. Oh my God, I'm Tyler. Oh my God, Tyler am I. Like, it just goes on and on and on and on. And I was like, oh my God, get to the point. Whatever. Yeah, again, because of the difference in the ending, I felt like the book was more of a cautionary tale. The movie was more of a romantic view and didn't show enough of the consequences. So in that case, it's not any surprise to me that people don't really think things through. People want someone to blame. They glommed onto this because, I don't think the movie did a good enough job of showing Tyler as the bad guy or in some ways. And I get, like, he died. I get it. But everything fell over, and the narrator's kind of in a good place, and Marla's there, and they're holding hands, and the pixies come on, and you're like, yeah, man. So, like, I kind of wish that the ending had been the book ending, where he's, like, in a mental institution, and he's like, oh my God, life is really fucked up, and now I'm here, and I'm safe, and I'm scared, and then every now and then an orderly comes by with a bandaged nose, and is like, we're waiting for you, sir. Don't worry, sir. We're fine. Like, that's hella creepy, and way better. I would have loved that as a better ending.
I think the ending, like, it's intentionally ambiguous. You're seeing these buildings collapse, and you can start calculating all the damage that's being done. It's a false positive. You have the Pixies music come on, and I think it's just because you don't want to leave the theater in this total depressing drag. And so it is...
But that would have resonated more.
Yeah. But it's also like, how do you leave the film? Do you leave it going, oh my God, I just want to kill myself now? Or do you leave it going, thinking of the guitar from, Frank Black and going, oh yeah, that's awesome.
Well, I think that kind of goes to what's the point? If the point of the movie or whatever your piece of art is to make people go, oh crap, I've just questioned my whole life and I really need to go home and think about my choices, then that's okay to leave people leaving the theater going, oh crap, I've just questioned my whole life and I need to think about my choices. But you have it end on a rousing, technically the film ends with a penis blip because that's our last shot, which to me is kind of like maybe Tyler's going to come back because he is the ultimate dick. Blah, 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 blah. But I don't know. To me, and I like ambiguous endings. I think it would have been more ambiguous and way creepier, and would have made the point more if it had been the book ending. That's my opinion.
I wonder about that with the whole idea of, you're trying to take responsibility for your life. And that's the problem that the narrator has, is that he's not taking responsibility. He likes Marla, but he won't accept that he likes her. He's having these issues with stress and how his job is wearing him down because he is killing people in some ways because he won't order a recall. That's dangerous if it doesn't help the bottom line. I find that scene with the gas clerk attendant to be really fascinating of, we're going to kill you unless you go back and become a veterinarian, because that's what you're supposed to do. And so how much of this anger is just our own inability to face up to our lives? Well, that goes to, we're supposed to be adults. We're still children. It's that graduate idea of what does it mean to be an adult in our culture? We're sold this. It's not fulfilling. So what are we left with? And having to create that meaning.
Right. So self-improvement is masturbation, but you better go to school and become a vet, or I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
No. And also fuck you.
Well, that's also like Tyler is an anarchist to the extreme of he
doesn't think anything through. He's not a good, don't follow him, which is my point.
He does think things through. Well, he is a master planner. He's a
master planner, but he doesn't think about the consequences of his actions and how they affect other people. Anyways, okay, I'm so done. I am Kaylia's enraged sense of wanting to be done. Was it worth your time? Yes, no, real quick.
It was worth my time back in 1999. It was worth my time when I was working as a retail clerk, selling people calendars and reading this on my breaks. I'd say, yeah, it's worth your time. It's worth your time to go through and analyze it. And what did it mean in 1999? What does it mean today?
The movie and the book?
Yeah, and also I go back to this, is that authoritarianism, which Tyler represents, is ultimately self-destructive. And that is something that we are very much still facing today. Mm-hmm. It's on the rise. And what does this ultimately mean? So, yeah, I think in terms of that, it is worth your time. It is worth your time to reconsider this. And the film is fun if you're in the mood for it.
Yes, you definitely have to be in the mood for it, I would say. The film was worth my time when I saw it because it was a very interesting film.
And you can watch it like 20 different times to get something new each time.
Yeah, you definitely... Its repeatability factor is high. I would get that, although you don't get the same twist because you just can't. But now you get to watch it like being in the know, which is kind of fun. So yeah, I would say... And I think the film did a good job in a lot of ways of what it was trying to do. I've already made my complaints. I don't need to rehash them all. The book is not a terribly long read. But it did make me feel gross afterwards. Like I felt like I needed to take a shower. So...
And get that fancy soap.
Yeah, get that fancy soap. Today's episode of Pages and Popcorn Podcast is brought to you by patrons. If you are a patron, thank you very much. And if you're not a patron, please become a patron. $1 a month or $5 if you're feeling especially generous will help us continue to make this exciting show for you. And we are going to go on summer break.
Pretty soon, yeah.
Well, this is our last episode for the summer. So, no episodes in August, but we will see you all back in September of 2019. Lord willing, the creeks don't rise. Thanks so much.
Bye.